Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Strip Search, the comic strip podcast. I am Pete Chianca here, as always, with Dave London. Hello, Dave.
Hey Pete,
How's it going? You got a little of those seasonal allergies going on?
I got a lot of those seasonal allergies. As I was telling you, between the seasonal allergies and my dog, I have a dog, but I also am allergic to dogs, so it's not a great combination. But
You are a
yeah,
dedicated dog owner if you were willing to put up with that.
the dog gets a lot more leeway than like the regular members of the family. Yes,
Yes, I could absolutely relate to that. We've got two who fall into that same category. So that's the one bad side effect, I guess, of finally it feeling like spring a little bit.
right, right. Although
Um,
today it feels like spring. Yesterday it was freezing. It felt like winter. I don't know, what's going on. It's
yes, if
as
you're
if
listening,
in New England.
I was going to say, if you're listening from anywhere outside of New England, you're probably wondering what we're talking about because it's probably been spring wherever you are for weeks, but not here. Um, maybe it's here now, or maybe we'll wake up tomorrow and it'll be 90, and that will be it for our spring. We Dave and I talk about this a lot. We're kind of obsessed with our weather here, but regardless, life goes on, and comic strips and etc. go on. That's what we love to talk about here on Strip Search, and I'll tell you who our special guest is shortly. But first, there's is some eventful weeks in terms of comic strip news that you've been keeping up with, right, Dave?
There's a few different items that have popped up since our last podcast was published. So notably, two syndicated strips, very famous long-running strips, have decided to hang up their quill pens, so to speak. So Sandra Bell Lundy, who's been drawing Between Friends for 36 years,
Wow.
and Lincoln Pierce, who's been doing Big Nate for I don't know exactly how long, but certainly a modicum of time. Both of those artists have decided they're going to keep doing their Sundays, but they've decided to hang up the ink and quill for the dailies, and so they'll just be Sunday only at this point.
That's always too bad when you see these long running strips. I assume the Big Nate books will continue.
I I mean, I would think that he's going to focus on books. That would make a lot of sense. And he's not the first person to stop a strip to focus on novels. In fact, today's guest, as a little preview, was one such cartoonist. But also, you have others who have done strips for a period of time and have gotten the opportunity to jump into the graphic novel format. Pajama Diaries was one that comes to mind. But anyways, not to belabor that, a couple of
Yeah.
other
And just
items.
to
Yeah.
give a little kudos to Between Friends because that there aren't unfortunately there aren't a ton of strips by women cartoonists. And I think that was one of the better ones, so that one will definitely be missed from the comics pages.
And speaking of women cartoonists, a very famous long-running cartoon, Sylvia is the name of the cartoon strip by Nicole Hollander. Nicole sadly has passed away, and so we just want to pay our respects to another very, very talented female cartoonist.
Um, well, life goes on, Dave.
Life does goes on.
You know,
Uh, as it
but we
wasn't it who was it, Haywood Sullivan of the Red Sox, who said, "The sun rises, the sun sets, and I'm going to have lunch."
that really could be our motto.
It could very well be. And then I guess the last piece of news to raise is so in the National Cartoonist Society Reuben Awards, which have been every year. Uh, uh, there's the Reuben Award for Outstanding Cartoonist of the Year, which is the top award, but there's also divisional awards for each of the various divisions, such as print comic strips, online strips, gag cartoons, greeting cards, and so on and so forth. So the nominees have been announced. A little too many to go through on our podcast here, who all the various nominees are, but we certainly have cartoonists from all over the country who are represented. Anyone who wants to take a look at the nominees can certainly go into nationalcartoonist.com and see the list of people up for the divisional awards.
Right. And we'll put a link also on our website, petpeevescomic.com/podcast, along with this episode, so you could check those out. Which one did we get nominated for again?
That's the silent award we got nominated for.
The Wait Till Next Year award.
Exactly. It's like the old Red Sox wait till next year award.
Do you have the top cartoonist of the year nominees handy?
I could get them handy. If there was a way to do that while I'm stalling, certainly. So the the top cartoonists for the year, there's actually seven of them. Usually there's six, but I think there was a tie for just the nomination. So there's actually seven this year. Dave Blazek, Tauhid Bandia, Will Henry, Dav Pilkey, Dana Simpson, Mark Tatuli, and Raina Telgemeier. Hopefully I didn't botch anybody's pronunciation of their names. Those are
Yeah,
the seven folks.
that's quite an impressive list, and I'm sure to be some tough competition. We've of course had Will Henry on the show a couple of times, and he's a New England guy whose work we love. But I will have to hit up some of those others to come on sometime in the next couple of months. Depending on
Absolutely.
maybe they'll want to talk it up before the
Yeah.
awards, get a little publicity.
The vast publicity of the Strip Search podcast, reaching
Exactly.
all corners of the globe.
That could really goose the vote in somebody's favor if they
By the way,
came
how
on.
is it all corners of the globe if the globe is round and there are no corners? Where does that come from?
I don't know. Flat earthers, no doubt. They
Apparently so.
four corners, one on each end.
Right, because we go over the map and there's four corners. I get it. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
that's how.
Do you have any news for us?
I just wanted to mention one thing. I came across this post by Merriam-Webster, who is not a person. That is, in fact, a dictionary. I don't know if you were aware of that.
Was
Not
not.
some lady named Miriam. Merriam-Webster has its own social media accounts, and it's always posting interesting things. And it actually posted a very pertinent comic strip related series of posts, in fact, um, in which it defined the word grawlix, Grawlix. Had you heard that particular
I,
word previously?
I do know because we had obviously you had texted me about this, and I was familiar with where that came from, being in the comics industry.
I had not heard it, and it is a word credited to the late cartoonist Mort Walker of Beetle Bailey fame. It's a word to describe that series of characters that are often used in comic strips to represent profanity. For instance, number sign, dollar sign, ampersand, exclamation point, question mark, all strung together. And apparently, cartoonists have been doing that for over 100 years. It's almost as old as cartooning itself. But it was Mort Walker who coined that term, and it is now in the Merriam-Webster. So now I can just say, we're going to throw a Grawlix in there. I don't have to type out all those crazy characters.
That's fantastic, and maybe that you can use that in your day job. If
I
somebody's
I
writing an
think
article.
I think I might. We do. Some people they do the asterisks to replace the three of the letters in the four-letter word. That's no fun. You want a Grawlix in there if you're really gonna get people's attention going.
You should actually have various Beetle Bailey characters and all. For those listeners who don't know, your day job is as an editor of. Can you say
I do. I
the
work over at Boston.com. We're part of Boston Globe Media. It's a very reputable journalistic entity. But I don't think we're above using a Grawlix.
and so maybe you can have like little Beetle Bailey characters in various articles. You can have like Sarge and Otto peek through.
As Sarge might say. I don't know how you pronounce a Grawlix, short of actually saying the
I think you
dirty
just say the
word.
swear.
So
Yeah, you just say it. Yeah,
you
the
just
F word. Yeah.
come right out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would probably get me fired. Okay, so that's really all I had prior to introducing our special guest, who we will meet after the break. His name is Norm Feuti, and he is very well known on a multitude of fronts involving cartooning, illustration, and books, and you will learn all about that yourself in about 30 seconds. So stay tuned, everybody. Hey everybody, do you know someone in middle school who likes to read or who thinks they don't like to read but just haven't found the right book yet? Check out Freddie Peeves and the Scoop on the Sinking School, a middle grade journalism mystery featuring the characters from the Pet Peeves comic strip by London and Chianca. Available March 21st, 2026 For information, visit petpeevescomic.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to Strip Search, the comic strip podcast with me, Pete Yanka, and my co-host, Dave London. We're at our favorite part of the show when we introduce our special guest. Now, if you're a fan of comic strips, which I assume you are if you are listening, you may know our guest, Norm Feuti, from his two syndicated comic strips, Retail, which ran from 2006 to 2020, and Gill, which he drew from 2012 to 2022. He also does the early reader series Beak Ally. That one was the winner of the Theodore Seuss Geisel Honor in 2022, and Hello Hedgehog. And he also just released a new middle grade novel, a graphic novel to be precise, called A Kid Like Me. It's about finding your place in the middle school social landscape. Norm, welcome to Strip Search.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. And we're going to get into all of your comics work and your books and everything else. But first, I have to ask, I grew up in a retail family. My father owned a couple of men's clothing stores. This was my job, like high school, college,
Yeah,
after college when things didn't work out so great with my first job. So I can relate to that strip, which I know you drew from your real life. Did you just spend a lot of time at work just saying that this has to be a comic strip?
I mean, I lived it for as long as I wrote the strip. I think I lived it before. I worked in retail and retail management in a variety of stores for about 15 years. So, yeah, everything that is in the strip comes from my real life experience in the retail trenches, as it were.
I mean, I know in going back through before this, I was like, wow, I recognize that.
And yeah,
That happened to me. And I think so many people, this is like their first job. And I think that's why, I mean, and obviously you were able it ran for a long time. So you were able to get a lot of material out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and that's why I always tried to write it from the standpoint of, realistic experiences of retail employees and try to keep it funny. I shied away from, oh, let's make, kooky shopper jokes or whatever. I
Mm,
think that's what the appeal was for it, for the audience that it had. I mean, people appreciated it, that it was realistic,
yeah.
and it spoke to the actual experience of working in retail rather than just trying to make cheap shopping jokes.
Right, right.
So not only were you doing the retail strip, which is a full-time gig, but then you jumped in with a second strip, Gill. So can you talk about the thought process of doubling your work and the thought about taking on that load?
The insanity of trying to do two comic strips at the same time. Yeah, so I mean, I had been do so retail launched in 2006, and Gill launched as my second comic strip in 2012. So I had been doing retail for some time at that point. Um, and it was at that point where I kind of wanted, I had been writing sort of about the same thing and the same characters for a long time, and I really wanted to do something more family based and something that kind of reflected my own upbringing with a single mom, uh, living in less than ideal circumstances. So Gill was a thing I developed as just sort of a web comic online for a time. And the positive response of it kind of gave me the encouragement to try to actually get it syndicated. And I was able to do that in 2012 with King Features.
And they both ran simultaneously for a while.
For 2 years, yeah. Gill didn't last in syndication, sadly. It was about 2 years before, and I think maybe it picked up six newspapers in its
Mhm.
entirety. But one of those newspapers was the Providence Journal. And when the strip got canceled, the editor there reached out to me because he had received hundreds of letters and emails, just wanting the strip back. And they actually offered to pay me to do it just as a Sunday comic for them, and I continued to do that until 2022. So
And
I
I believe and I believe that was the same paper. We talked to Will Henry on the show. His when they their parent company had rejiggered all the comics and his strip got, despite him being a Rhode Island resident got shuffled off the page, and there was an uprising, and they responded and came back personally. So clearly
Yeah,
they are interested in making sure the comics continue to thrive.
right. Well, and there's just sort of there's definitely can be a disconnect between what connects with readers and what the editors or the corporate entity that owns the newspapers is. So
So from there, you transitioned into Beak Ally, which are graphic novels for young readers, if I'm not mistaken, and Hello Hedgehog, which is more of an early readers, sort of introducing kids to the concept of actually enjoying reading. So what talk about that transition because it's a different audience, it's a very different sort of art form in its own right. How did you sort of
yeah.
approach that?
So one of the great things about Gil, going back to that, is while I was doing it, it actually attracted the attention of an editor at Scholastic. And at the time, they were having huge success with graphic novels like Smile, and that were reaching out to kids with realistic stories. So that the content of Gil caught his eye, and he thought that would make the great a great concept for a graphic novel. So that's why he reached out to me. Unfortunately, I was under contract with King Features at the time, and the contract was such that trying to do a graphic novel based on Gil with my hands tied with that contract wouldn't really have been financially a great
Yeah.
thing for me to do. So I did maintain that relationship, and he's like, well, if you have any other ideas for graphic novels, I'd be happy to take a look at them. So it was, I did have an idea for a kid's graphic novel. It was a fantasy novel called The King of Kazoo, and that was actually my first graphic novel. And it was picked up by Scholastic Graphics with that editor. And that was in 2016. Uh, After I did that, I had hopes on continuing that story as a series, which didn't pan out. But at this point, I had gotten an agent because I needed one to, negotiate the deal with Scholastic. So while we were waiting to hear back on subsequent books for The King of Kazoo, I had an idea for Hello Hedgehog, just doing like a simple early reader type book in a graphic novel format, which happens was also kind of a popular thing that was going on at the time. And another editor at Scholastic liked that concept, and they were actually launching a new imprint, Acorn, which was aimed at early readers, and they were looking for things in that graphic novel format, with simple word balloons and dialogue. And so I, ended up signing a 3-book deal for Hello Hedgehog, which turned into a 6-book deal eventually. And after I had done those, I had the idea for Beak Ally, which my agent shopped around. This time, Harper Alley, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, were in that, and that turned into a 4-book deal. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, as much as I can't say that I miss doing syndicated comics day after day, for it can become quite a grind. It's a thing that opened the door for me in my career entirely. So I always have a soft spot for
Mhm.
that part of my career.
And so continuing on with the narrative, you've now jumped into the middle grade books. You have a new graphic novel, A Kid Like Me. It's about trying to fit in middle school. And I'm sure at least some, if not most of our readers, we've all been through middle school and all the sort of challenges that brings, the horrifying process that can be. Tell us how that came to be.
Yeah. So during the time that editor had reached out to me long ago, I did kind of develop some concepts for how I would tell a Gil graphic novel, and I sort of held on to those ideas even though I hadn't done anything with them. So after I had done these, the Beak Ally series and the Hello Hedgehog series, my agent was kind of steering me towards I think you'd be really good at doing like a middle grade book. do you have any ideas for that? And I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I do. But rather than centering them around Gil and the characters in that universe, I sort of made it, design characters that were more realistic. It's less of a comedy, and it's sort of reflective of the way I grew up, but I wanted to tell a modern day story. So it's a fictional story, but it's really informed by my own upbringing. Growing up in poverty with a single mom, my dad wasn't around. And I wanted to tell a story about fitting in from that perspective because there's a lot of things in the world that, I grew up in the 80s. And there's a lot of parallels, to, cutting social programs. There's a lot of poverty shaming in the world. There's a lot of parallels between the 80s. A lot of things haven't changed, unfortunately. So I wanted to write a story with the character from that perspective. So that's where A Kid Like Me comes in. And it's about a kid named Ethan who is about to enter his first year of middle school. And he's nervous about it. He lives in a trailer park, and him and his best friend Ricky has convinced him that this regional middle school that they're going to, the other communities that it serves are much more affluent. So he's convinced that these kids are all going to be horrible rich kids and they're going to look down on them. And some of that comes true, but some of it doesn't. And Ethan tries to make new friends. So does Ricky. And it just really becomes a story about juggling complicated friendships and trying to fit in and be true to yourself at the same time.
Did you find, because Dave and I just worked on a middle grade sort of comic novel that's sort of a mystery story that takes place in a junior high school. And one thing I found difficult, because yeah, I'm sort of basing it on what I remembered from being that age, but trying to think, but what would a modern kid, I think, oh, well, of course the kid would have his cell phone there. So,
Right.
he wouldn't be, trapped with no help. He could just pick up his phone and call, so coming up with just sort of the way life must be different. Was that a challenge to sort of put yourself in the mind space of a kid today?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I do have the fortune of, I do have two kids of my own. They're both in their 20s now, but it wasn't so long ago that they were in middle school. And one of the concepts I came up with in the book, Ethan doesn't have he doesn't have the nice clothes that other kids have. He doesn't have designer sneakers. And he also, middle school is kind of the age where you usually get your first cell phone. But of course, Ethan's mom can't afford that. So, but she can get him sort of this cheap flip phone that he can use. And we did this to our daughter in middle school, not because we couldn't afford it, but because, we were maybe a little overprotective about, oh, middle school, that's too early to have a phone. And I'm sure she says all the kids have phones, but that can't possibly be true. It's absolutely true. Kids
Yeah.
have middle school. So we got her sort of like, it wasn't a flip phone, but it was basically like a BlackBerry sort of old school phone. And she was so embarrassed that she never took it out or used it. So it all sort of backfired on us and just created, so I kind of, held on to that and remembered, yeah, that's, it's on us, but that's sort of, an embarrassing thing to have to go through as a kid, right? You're gonna have to take out this. Of course, kids are gonna make fun of it or whatever. So I used that, and yeah, some of the other modern day things that my kids have gone through to inform me as well. But then also, like I said, the core of it is sort of the same. I think kids have it tougher in a lot of ways because of the internet, social media, and all that. But a lot of the core issues are kind of the same. Trying to fit in hasn't changed. There's just a wider world to do it in.
Absolutely.
So I want to jump into the more technical aspect. And when we have a cartoonist on who just does say strips, the question that I'll ask is typically, how do you write the gags? What's your process for it? And talk about your drawing, the
Sure.
tools, and so on. You obviously bring a whole new aspect to this because I want to ask you, going back to your strip days, how you wrote the gags. Did you go to a coffee shop? Did you wake up first thing in the morning before the day started? And also your tools process. But also I'd like to ask you to talk also about the same thing with the graphic novels, if I can sort of open it up for that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as far as writing goes, I'm an early riser. I need to most of my creative writing I have to do in the morning. If by 2 o'clock I'm kind of out of ideas and I'm burnt in that aspect. Drawing is always a more automatic, anytime kind of thing that I can, get myself into if I need to. Uh, my writing it's I do most of my writing on the computer, almost all of it, and it's almost always 100% dialogue. I imagine what it's going to look like in my head. So I don't do a lot of sketching like some people do. It's basically almost like a screenplay. I did that for the comic strips, and in many ways I do the graphic novels and the kid book the same way. I write dialogue. Um, I hear at the coffee shop a lot. I can't imagine trying to get anything done at the coffee shop. It's just not me. I need silence when I'm writing. I can't even listen to music. I just need just a chill atmosphere to get stuff done. When it comes to
With all that coffee, you have to keep going to the bathroom every 10
you're
minutes.
right. more and more often as the years go by. But yeah, yeah, drawing is a whole different thing. I can listen to music. I can even have TV on if it's not anything I need to really pay attention to. Um, but yeah, so as far as writing goes, I just it's a completely separate act from the drawing for me.
And then the tools, jump into the tools you used for retail, for Gil, and then the graphic novels, and also coloring. I'm interested in if you do your own coloring or how you if you farm that out.
Sure. So I started out drawing traditionally on Bristol board, pencil. I'd pencil everything in first, and then I would I used a combination of brush pens and microns. I did that for the first, I think until about 2016. The first graphic novel I did, The King of Kazoo, was also all done by hand. Um, and it was around that time. I was working on The King of Kazoo, which is like a 250-page book, and and I was doing the comic strip at the same time. It's a lot of work, and it was really crushing me at the time. And I had a few cartoonist friends, like Dan Thompson, who does Rip Haywire. You probably you know him. He had been using a Cintiq, a Wacom tablet Cintiq, for a while, and he kept trying to convince me, it's a game changer. You got to use it. It's going to save you so much time. And I had always kind of resisted it just because, I mean, it's an expensive thing. And I was always afraid, well, if I don't use this, I'm going to have, like, I don't want to spend $3,000 on a thing and then not use it. And there's going to be a learning curve and all that. So, luckily, my wife, who I was about halfway through the graphic novel, and she saw what I was going through, and she decided to just make my mind up for me. And I forget if it was for my birthday or for Father's Day. She surprised me with the Cintiq, and I was blown away. I honestly didn't see it coming, so I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's great!" And she's like, "Well, now you can finish the graphic novel with this." I was like, "I can't do that because I've already done half of it by hand, and it's going to look weird." And I was like, "No, but what I can do is I'll finish the graphic novel by hand, but I just trial by fire. The daily comics there's less at stake. People are going to see them once in the paper, and then that's it. Um, I'll learn how to use this thing on the daily comics, and then the next book I do, I can go back to the Cintiq." And that's since I've learned how to do I learned how to use the Cintiq during that period. After I finished that graphic novel, I don't think I've done anything professionally by hand either. So everything is done digitally on the Cintiq now.
Photoshop.
I use a pro. It's called Clip Studio. It used to be called Manga Studio. Um, I use Photoshop to color the strip. So yeah, I do color my own strips. I've been coloring my own comic, the retail, the web version of the. I've been coloring that since the beginning as well. I used to when I did it traditionally. I used to have to scan it in, and then I mean I had to do that anyway. But then I would color it in Photoshop. Just use everything's so much easier.
I find that coloring takes a lot of time. I don't think people realize. Did you find a way to sort of maximize your time for coloring? Because you can really get in the weeds with spending time on that.
You can, and it's not real. I don't consider it my strong suit. I've colored all the books that I've done myself. I don't farm it out. There was an option with my last graphic novel to hire a colorist. I chose not to. Um, but yeah, it is a lot of work. Um, I I don't know. I try to, find a palette that works and just kind of stick with it. It because it you can change colors endlessly if you really want to. But yeah, I just kind of get into a groove where I'll just do all the flats first, and then just like any other colorist does, and then I'll go back and do adjustments. I don't work on a ton of layers like some people do. I try to keep it down to like you know background, foreground characters. Work within those three layers if that makes sense for people who have colored in that kind of thing. When the comic strips are just all one layer of color, usually all flat layers because the only place people see the color was online at that point in time, and I wasn't doing anything, particularly visually complicated with the comic strips like I do with the graphic novels.
Have you ever gone back and just used pen or pencil and paper, but double tapped it, to
I yeah, try to watch.
yeah.
The biggest adjustment. Occasionally, I'll try to sketch something, and I forget like how bad my eyes have gotten just from aging. On the Cintiq, you just blow everything up to do all the details. But now when I'm trying to work on paper, I'm like, oh, I need readers to see this line that I'm making anymore.
All right, Dave, did you get all your answers? I know you like to
I,
get into the
I got
weeds
all
with
my
this
I got
stuff.
all my granular, cartoon geek answers on writing and drawing. So thank you for accommodating that.
Yeah, no problem.
Very good. And the other thing we always like to bring up because we have a big New England audience. Dave and I are both Massachusetts guys, of course, and as are you. I just quickly, if you could talk a little bit about your local background, whether or not that ever influences or has influenced any of your work.
Oh, very much. I mean, so I'm from Rhode Island originally. I've lived in Massachusetts now, southern Massachusetts. I live in a town called Plainville, which is near Foxborough for anybody who lives there. It's technically a Boston suburb, but they really get very liberal with what's a Boston suburb.
That is true.
I'm closer to Providence than I am to Boston. Um, but yeah, Gil, I think was very much if you're from Rhode Island, you knew the strip was based in Rhode Island because that's sort of, I bet I've lived in New England most of my life. When I was a teenager, I lived in Colorado for a little bit. Um, but yeah, most of the Guild comic, I always imagine it. And in my new graphic novel, A Kid Like Me is New England based. It's not in a specific state, but it has a very much of a New England vibe. I know Gil used to like going to the beach or having, stopping for Dell's Lemonade or, getting clam cakes, which I discovered were very, Rhode Island has it's a very small region of what clam cakes like when they're in that sort of giant, some states call them hush puppies, but you go to
Hmm.
Maine or even, New Hampshire and clam cakes become different things. So,
And did you ever work in any of the classic New England chains when you were doing retail?
Uh, not when I was doing retail. Only because that was more of a national comic strip, and it was like all over the place. I don't know how many papers even locally carried it. But Gill was so eventually became so based in Rhode Island.
Mm.
I think I did do a string of comics about Jolly Charlie's, which was an amusement park in Attleboro. If you're really old school, you will remember it. And in the strip, I just pretended that it still existed, but I mean, it's been since the '70s, I think. Never did any Rocky Point jokes. I probably should have.
And so you must are you a regular at an Unlikely Story, the Jeff Kitty's bookstore down your way?
It's hard not to be. It's literally like 3 miles from my house. Uh, and it's the greatest. It's just such a cool place. If you haven't been, make a trip and go in there. It's so cool. And Jeff's the night. I mean, Jeff's not there very often, I don't think, but he's just the nicest guy. He's as nice as you'd ever hope that someone that successful would be. If you know what
Yeah, he came on our show for some reason,
I mean.
and we loved talking to him. He was terrific.
Yeah, in case he's
Nor-
listening, greatest guy ever been.
No, Norm said, doesn't Jeff sort of has like a game show kind of thing, and he'll invite you to be one of the professional cartoonists that runs some of
Yeah.
the events that they have.
Um, he was doing one of the books, one of his books that he was doing a tour on. They did it a thing at Unlikely Story. Yeah, they do like a game show with the kids. I was one of several cartoonists. He invited me to go up, and it's just sort of like a trivia show, trivia game again, pop culture kind of thing that you play against the kids real quick. And I think we've also, I know Dave, we've done like a draw off kind of thing with other cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. They do a lot of great.
That's great. All right. Well, believe it or not, we are coming up to the end. This went by fast, but we want to make sure before you go, you tell people how they could find all of your past work, your current work, anything else they need to know about a kid like me. But just in terms of just finding it or what they might be interested in knowing about it.
Yeah, I mean, Hello Hedgehog, Beak Ally, A Kid Like Me. You can find those at any independent bookshop or wherever you buy books in real life or online. You'll find them there. Gil, you can read the old strips on Go Comics. It's just go to Go at his Go Comics. And I've also created an online archive for my retail comic strips, just retailcomics.com. And you can read the entire run there for free.
Excellent. And of course, we'll have, as always, we'll have links on our site, petpeevescomic.com/podcast. You'll see links and examples of Norm's work there. Norm, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
All right. And everybody else, including you, Dave, we will see you next month on another episode of Strip Search, the Comic Strip Podcast. Thanks, everybody.